Hello everyone, it's 11:02 and we are going to start with today's presentation. So today's webinar is going to connect us the stories of childhood in war period, and actually I think it's a very fascinating museum that we are going to discover. But before we start to present you today's webinar lecturer, Amina Krvavac, I would like to tell you more about the project, our webinars. So we are the Identity on the Line project. It's a large-scale European project connecting 6 history museums and 1 university. And we are working together to explore the long-term consequences of different migration processes, forced or voluntary, which took place in Europe in the last 100 years. Through the collections and dissemination of experiences from former migrants and their children, we summarized and we placed their stories in historical contexts. And by doing that, we are also working on several museums exhibitions that we are going to present in the next years. So we decided that between working and researching about several migration processes, we will also offer webinars. Webinars aiming to deep knowledge about topics like oral history, migration, empathy building, intersubjectivity, understanding of identity and relationships. Today, we will talk with Amina Krvavac. Hello, Amina. Hello, Sarajevo. Amina is the executive director of the War Childhood Museum in Sarajevo, in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Alongside the museum's small inaugural research team, she was engaged in a 2-year grassroots campaign, which culminated in the museum's opening in January 2017. She's interested in museums as spaces for social action and drives of change. Amina is committed to create exhibitions and workshops that support open and conscious dialogue, especially about the difficult past. Amina, thank you for joining us. Thank you for being with us, and thank you for speaking about such an important topic as it is childhood and war experience. So the floor is yours, please.
Hello, hi, and thank you once again for the introduction. Hello, everyone. It is really a pleasure to be here today to share with you more about the work of the War Childhood Museum, about its creation and development from, as you already said, from a local grassroots initiative. It developed first into a museum and local small museum in the old town of Sarajevo, which very quickly developed actually into an internationally acclaimed cultural institution. So before I continue telling you how it all happened, I would just tell you like generally what the War Childhood Museum is. It is research-led, human-centered museum that is exclusively dedicated to war-affected childhoods. Under war-affected childhoods, we like to emphasize that it is a very multi-layered and complex social phenomena consisting of so many different aspects that we still need to research and understand better, like generally as a society, as humanity, even as we really tend to oversimplify this experience often in academia, in mass media, in all different sections of life. And the museum has been established relatively recently. It opened its doors in January 2017, and it all started back in 2010. So what you can see in front of you is the logo and name of the project. War Childhood was initially a project started by my colleague Jasminko Halilovic back in 2010. And the museum is something that happened at the second stage of the War Childhood project. So Jasminko Halilovic was a young boy during the siege of Sarajevo, and later on as a young man he started thinking how to do something meaningful out of this experience, but not to focus only and not to capture only his personal experience. So he started thinking of ways to engage entire generation of children, of those who were no longer children, but who were children during the siege, and to somehow create a mosaic of what this experience was for many of them. So back in 2010, as I said, he launched an online call, and with this question that you can see in front of you. So he asked people to tell him what was the war childhood for each and every one of them, and how would they respond to this question in only one sentence, 160 characters. So this was really like it developed in somewhat unexpected way, because over 1,000 people responded to this, and so it was really clear that people were really feeling this need to share more, to have a platform where they would share about their war childhood experiences. So these are just to give you an idea what type of answers were given at this stage. So people were really creative and really getting back with so many different types of memories. It's one of them, and this is another one. So as you can see already here, with simple, or not so simple, but short rather sentences, it was very clear that war childhood,
Sorry,
as there were so many
Amina,
of these answers. Yasminko worked on this for a couple of years, so he edited this in a book. Hello? Am I still here?
Yes, you froze for a while, but actually you are here.
Okay, so you can hear me. Yes. My sound was not interrupted. Okay, yeah. That's important. So then these were compiled, a book, which was so a mosaic of the short recollections of over 1,000 of former children. And it was published in 2013. And later on, it was also translated and published in English, French, and other languages. But where the journey of the museum, let's say, somehow, this is the evening when the book was published in Bosnia, in Sarajevo. So the event was a book launch in a youth center. And here you can see that it wasn't a typical book launch. It was really like huge popular event, and so many people showed up, so many people were interested and eager participate in this event. So that there was this clear demonstration that there was a need in a society for a platform, an initiative where people would share and exchange their war childhood experiences. And it was clear that there was a need for something that would provide opportunity to share more than just one sentence or 160 characters. So, and this is, and all this interest, the idea for creation of the museum was born. And I was one of these people to join Yasminko in this endeavor to create a museum. So it was Yasminko, a third colleague Selma, and myself that started meeting and developing this concept on creating a museum in the future. And I felt really joined the project as I was a war child myself, and I also not actually war, but children's rights are at the core of my professional interests. So this was really like a great match for me from all points of view. And this is so how back in 2015, we got to the second stage of War Childhood project and started developing the War Childhood. So unlike the book, which was consisting of experiences and sentences of those who were children in Sarajevo, the museum from the very beginning welcomed stories from children from all parts. So in as a first thing that we started working on, let's say, was how a collection of a future museum. So how to develop methodology that would serve as a basis for the work of the museum. And as I said, it was just the three of us. We had no funding, we had no space to work, and it was very, very challenging also from different points of view and different aspects, because also none of us had any museum profession backgrounds. But we were really, really determined to make it work, and we started exploring possibilities there on how to engage with young professionals from different disciplines that were also war children at the time, and that we knew would be eager really to contribute to the idea. And we started reaching out to all different kinds of professionals among our friends and friends of friends, so larger community. And indeed, this is what we got. So during this very initial stage, when we were still about to develop methodology for creating our collection, we had more than 30 volunteers, and we had more than 11,000 hours of volunteering contribution from psychologists, historians, museum professionals, anthropologists, medical doctors, child rights experts, economists. So we really created this interdisciplinary team that helped us in developing methodology that, in our view, is really like as all-encompassing as it could be. Of course, there are always things that can and should be improved later on, but to start with, we were very proud about this achievement. And several months later, we actually started collecting first personal objects, personal stories. We started recording oral history testimonies. And so at this stage, we, as I said, had no space and had no funding. So we were meeting in local bars, in restaurants, in shopping malls, with like potential participants, and later on with participants whom we were meeting regularly. So just to maintain this sense of community and belonging. So one of the biggest challenges at this stage when you are working under these conditions was like, how do you build trust? How do you make people believe you that you are actually going to have and to be a museum one day, and that their very, very precious wartime memorabilia that they were keeping for 20 years and more would be safe, because we, as I said, had no like super safe storage at the time where we would be keeping these objects. People couldn't know if we will succeed or not, but somehow, luckily, I would say, the legacy of the book helped, so that people already got the sense, okay, this is a serious project. It already resulted in a book, so let's put some trust in these three enthusiasts, and let's share our stories and memories with them. And in just I would say less than a year, we had over 2,000 personal objects accompanying stories. We had over 100 hours of oral history testimonies. So besides So all this that we understood that we gained this trust, this was really huge accomplishment for us. But we believe that this was also partly because we were part of that community. So very important aspect of our work at the time in building trust, we later on analyzed and recognized what was this fact that we were very familiar with the local context here nowadays, with all the complexities and sensitivities of our society, post-conflict society. But we also shared this experience with people, so they were feeling, okay, like this is a group with whom I share this experience, and I am safe here to tell my story. And we were also acutely aware of all the danger that comes with researching and documenting war affected childhoods. So our methodology was really carefully developed in a way that it does not hurt anyone along the way. I mean, hurt in the sense of traumatizing or re-traumatizing anyone. So we partnered with the Association of Psychologists that actually trained us to how to protect ourselves while working in the field, and how to protect informants, so people who were telling their stories and with whom we were recording oral history testimonies. So there are some basic grounding techniques, and there are some areas where we decided not to dig because, of course, we didn't want anyone to get hurt during this process. And so besides this research activities, we also at this stage, so 1 year after we were already collecting and documenting the experiences, we started thinking about the design of our future exhibition and the space once we have the space. So how would this look like? And this is where we also, so besides crowdsourcing our collection, we also engaged a community of people who donated their belongings to our collection. We engaged everybody to tell us how do they see and imagine the future museum. So the images you see in front of you are from some of the gatherings where we were inquiring, so how would you like this museum to be one day, so that you feel like it's your museum, and like what would you like to see there, how would you like things to look like, what types of activities would be important for all of you. So this is where we also worked a lot with the community. So in 2016, we decided it's important to start experimenting with exhibitions. So we had our first Semperia exhibition at the Historical Museum of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and so this is where we wanted to show it to even larger community. So why are we collecting this memorabilia? What do we want to achieve? How do we want to exhibit these wartime stories and objects, and why is that important? And so this exhibition was one of the most visited exhibitions in recent history of the city. In 1 week, over 4,000 visitors came to see our exhibition, which for Zaire is really big numbers. And we were really proud and also surprised a bit that the exhibition was so popular that it attracted audiences that were not necessarily, if we want to engage with stereotypes of it, so I would say atypical museum audiences. So we had people coming not knowing where the historical museum is at all to see this exhibition. So we had football fans coming and like being very interested and reacting very strongly to the exhibition. So all this was another sign that we should start aiming at finding a venue for our permanent exhibition. And this is so how we started, like what we gained from producing and hosting this temporary exhibition. So what I briefly touched upon already is that all of this was happening in a context that is post-conflict society, where things are still very much divided and segregated along ethnic lines, where we have parallel narratives about the recent past and war, and basically our decision not to align with any of this main narratives, I would say, but just to allow children from all parts of Bosnia and Herzegovina that are affiliated with any ethnic group just to be participants, to have the museum as a platform for all children. This did not come without a cost. So we were not, let's say, in a position that we could turn to any authorities for help, I mean, not even for help, but if there is clearly this recognition of wider public and society even at large to say, okay, we want this museum to happen, there was still a lot of obstacles and problems with municipal, city, federal, cantonal, any type of authorities who could allocate a space or help us place our collection and our permanent exhibition somewhere. And this was somehow getting like almost impossible. We were just, wherever we would come and knock the door, we would just be told there is no space for you, there is no space for you, and there is no space for you. So what we decided to do, we decided to turn for help to our large already community. And this, what you can see, is a social media campaign. So you see families who came to visit our temporary exhibition, who were like taking their family photos with the signs. I don't know if you can read it, but the sign is saying, "I want the War Childhood Museum." So people were just voicing their ideas and clearly demonstrating their support for the museum to get a space and to finally open. And so this is again something that we were not aware of, but we only later find out that during that period, during a football match of one of the biggest football clubs in town. So this white line is a transparent saying, again, we want the War Childhood Museum to open. So we were really getting support from all different kinds of communities within the city, but not at any level of government, not from the authorities that actually were the key to making this happen. And so after a lot of struggling and after all these obstacles, we finally managed to fight and to win, I would say, with huge support of our community. We, one of the local municipal mayors decided to allow us to rent this place. So what is important here is that we were not looking for a free space. Okay, we said we are now okay to fundraise successfully. We have support of international donors, so we will be paying for a rent, just give us a space. And they were still saying there is no space for you. So this municipal building was completely abandoned, as you can see, and inside there were just some old chairs that were used in old cafes in the neighborhood, but they were still claiming that this is that this space should be used for something else. And this is how we renovated it. This is so outside, and inside you see this was what we rented, and this is what it is now. This is our permanent exhibition. And this is the opening night of in January 2017. Is produced in a way that it offers and to the complexity of war-affected childhoods, all its different aspects, but very importantly, it really emphasizes the resilience and strength of children, even in these difficult circumstances. So we strive and we try to go beyond trauma and sufferings only, and we try to portray children as resilient and active agents in societies, even war-affected societies. And this is where we believe that we somehow facilitate this shift in self-perceptions and identity. So we feel that this is, and it's not just that we feel, we actually evaluate all our activities, including this that I'm talking about now. So how do people who come to visit the exhibition, and when they see their objects exhibited with dignity and their stories presented with importance, so they feel like their experiences are validated, they feel like they are not merely presented as passive victims, but they feel that this is really empowering and no longer, as I said, like it's not pityness. We try to evoke and create and build empathy, but not pityness. And this is really something that is a big part of data that we gather and evaluate. This is always coming and like at the top as very important aspect of our work. So in a very short period of time, this was 2 years after the initial campaign and creation of methodology actually started. So we already had several thousands of personal objects and stories. We already had hundreds of hours of oral history testimonies, but it was all coming from different parts of Bosnia and Herzegovina. So what we understood, it happened in a very organic and natural way, that we started thinking, but war-affected childhood for us is a question of past, and now through this project we are trying to deal with our past experiences, but this is nowadays a reality for many children across the world. So we started looking for partners working in different war-affected areas or working with war-affected communities in different parts of the world. And we started expanding first our research activities and we started documenting stories of Syrian children, of Ukrainian children, Afghani, Palestinian children. So all different types of communities that we could reach through our partners that are actively working with them in the field. And so in case of the difference between our work and our goals with communities here and these children that are currently affected by an armed conflict is in the following. So here We are a platform for people who were children and now are adults to share and exchange their stories, to leave part of the burden they were carrying for years, and just we learn help people to face their individual but also collective past, and somehow it helps people to heal. And of course, if we start thinking about spillover effect of like, so every individual is getting better, so of course this is then making society better and like healthier, if I can say so. And of course, I'm not saying here that we have superpower. We are still just a museum. I mean, not. I'm aware of limitations that we as institutions have, but still, I think it's important that we also speak about this role of museums, that we should have, and we do have a role in helping societies heal. So besides being places where people can learn about different things, there's also this social aspect, and we shouldn't neglect that at all, but on the contrary, in our case, it proves to be very, very, actually the most important thing that it is coming as a result of our work. So this is when it comes to our work in Bosnia and Herzegovina and post-conflict societies. But when it comes to our work in conflict-affected areas and communities going through it now, so the focus and aims are somewhat different. So there we want to still provide platform for those war-affected children, but we want to be a platform for them to tell about their experiences now. So just to make their voices heard in different parts of the world, let's say, and we want them to know that their stories, their perspectives matter, that there is a better future waiting for them. So what I learned from when I first went to a refugee camp in Lebanon, hosting Syrian refugee children, I wasn't even aware of this aspect of our work, but I understood that just by telling children who are currently living in refugee camps that we were also refugee ones, that we also couldn't go to school, but now we are like professionals, we have a museum, we think that their stories are super important, we want to share them. And so and children take this as a light and think of it as there is a hope for us too. So this was really amazing discovery, I would say, for us. And so we also had pop-up and temporary exhibitions about Syrian children, and we are now producing the exhibition on the experiences of Ukrainian children. So today, War Childhood Museum operates based on these 4 main pillars of our work. And these are research, documentation, preservation, where we collect, I already mentioned briefly. So we have all different types of stories and experiences and physical objects in our collection. Some of them speak about wartime play, about wartime education. Some of them, of course, speak about personal losses, wounding, traumatic experiences. Some of them speak about free time. So it's really important that we maintain this idea about the complexity of war-affected childhood, that is not less, if not more than the peacetime childhood. And so we also, I didn't mention, besides collecting and exhibiting the collected materials, we also have many different types of workshops aiming at different age groups like of primary and secondary school children. And the idea is for these workshops to, of course, emphasize the absurdity of any war, and to like emphasize the importance that each and every one of us as an individual have in a society to preserve, build peace. So our workshops are also, similarly to our research activities, first started locally, but then it developed into set of workshops that we also now work with groups of international students. And now with Corona, we are exploring new possibilities and actually successfully delivering them via different online platforms. And definitely very, very important pillar of our work is community engagement. So pre-pandemic times, we were organizing different types of social events and workshops for children, young people from local communities and we were inviting them to participate in these activities. So we had, for example, IT workshops, creative art workshops, so not necessarily related to our core work, but we were trying to find ways to contribute to local community. So we had some ecological, like raising awareness about the importance of being responsible also in this sense of respecting the nature and biodiversity. And so we really try to be active as much as we can and contribute in helping children and young people to create better local communities and environments where we're not only museums, but all of us would thrive together. And so this innovative approaches that we were introducing in reaching out to communities, new audiences, both locally and internationally. And this demonstration that I previously mentioned, that museums should and do contribute to healing of conflict and post-conflict societies and help them deal better with difficult past. So this attracted interest of academic institutions, museums, and mass media, like all main. So from New York to Tokyo, we like to say. So we were just receiving messages of support and interest from all over the world, really. And so this was together with what happened in 2018. We received the Council of Europe Museum Award, which actually said that we were showing excellence in every aspect of our work. And so we were really, it was a clear demonstration sign for us that we are on the right path, that we are doing an important work. It was a motivation just to continue aspiring to the highest standard in the museum industry, but also yeah, in all different sections of our work that were more maybe related to psychology and anthropology and different disciplines. So after the European Council of Europe Museum Award, which I think the audience here today is very much familiar with, it's one of the most prestigious museum awards. We were also finalists for the European Museum Academy Award. We received special award in the program for Best Slavic Museum. So our work is really widely recognized, and we are very much grateful for this. And we, as I said, know that we are on the right path. So I would finish here. Thank you all for your time and attention, and I would be happy now that we engage in a discussion, and I would be more than happy to take any of the questions that you may have.
Amina, thank you very much. To all the listeners, first, two very important things. Of course, we are recording, and actually you will be able to look at the webinars also on our webpage. And when we finish, please don't forget to fill in the survey. So at the end, you will get the survey, and please help us to improve our webinars and our project in order to do the survey. So thank you again, and now it's time for questions. Of course, I already do have a question, and I also invite the others to write down their questions. So my question is, how do you deal with the pain of the visitors? So the empathy. I visited several times the museum, and of course, I love the narrative. I love the structure of how the museum and its narrative itself, it's put on display, but it's a narrative full of emotions. As you said, no pittiness, but emotions are there, and of course people are crying. So at the end, how do you deal with the visitors themselves?
Yeah, thank you. So I will answer this now, or we will collect other questions?
Yes, and then I will read you the other questions.
Okay. So this, already during the temporary exhibition in 2016, we understood that so different people, depending on so many different factors, like what are their life experiences, emotional predispositions, like familiarity with the topic. So all these different elements somehow determine how the strength of the reaction, let's say. And we started again with this association of psychologists help us there to think of some ways on how to ground people if we see that they are really, really upset. And also we started thinking about this aspect in designing our exhibitions. So what we are actually trying to achieve with every permanent or temporary or pop-up exhibition is like to maintain this balance between very potentially how do you say the stories that would produce the strong reactions with some like even funny and lighter stories. So this already somehow helps not to have some super strong reactions, but we also developed a small set of actions. Let's say we offer people chocolate and water, and we debrief. So what we have as a small museum is this luxury that we actually have a conversation with every visitor. So museum staff is welcoming everybody and giving short introduction about the exhibition, and later on possibility to somehow process part of the emotions together. And this, as I said, like so a bit of chocolate to help you rebalance, and some water, and this very light conversation, and some again basic techniques for grounding and inviting people to return to the now proves to work very well. I don't know, what do you think? How did you manage to return to, if you were, I don't know how upset you were, but I don't think that the exhibition is designed in a way to really upset you to the point that you cannot handle. Of course, if
no.
Yeah.
I mean, I cried a lot because I felt that connection, because we are on a similar age, and I was already a teenager. So reading stories of teenagers of my same age who experienced such a trauma in the same period when I was already at the faculty or at the secondary school, it makes you think about your own decision, about your own life. So basically it's a very emphatic museum. But let us go to the other questions. We already have 4, and 1 congratulations, of course, for yours. Okay, we already have 6 questions, so I will be really very quick. To merge them all together, one is connected to the political situation itself in Bosnia and how the politicians are dealing with your museums right now. Because actually you said that there was no space for the War Childhood Museum, and people would like to know more about the situation nowadays and how do the authority looks at your museum right now, and how do you manage all this troubleness or interactions. And at the same time, you can also tell us if there are any similar museums around the world like yours.
Okay, so first to address this issue of political situation and relations or inexistent support at the museum. So there is still, we still do not receive support and recognition from authorities here. And recently we went through the opposite again, a lot of obstacles and questionings and some very malicious spins from some of the politicians about the essence of our work. So even after all this international recognitions and prizes coming from different parts of the world and also from within the society, because people are very loudly saying about the importance of this initiative in a society, there is still no support, if not obstacles continue to be there and we had to fight them. But in a way, maybe this is really even making us stronger and work harder. And yeah, so this is still not there. When, for example, just to give you an illustrative example, when we went to Strasbourg to receive this Council of Europe award, our counterparts in Strasbourg were really shocked that there was no city or even country delegation accompanying us, which is what they've seen for the last 40 years with other museums who received the same award. With us, it was just our small museum team, and we did not have any even phone calls from authorities here, from anyone like Ministry of Culture, anything that would just say, okay, well done, this is well deserved, or we would try to be there and help. So we still managed to operate with help of international donors. And of course, before pandemic, we were generating our own revenues, which now I guess, as everywhere else in the world, is really, really affected by the situation with the COVID.
So are there any similar museums as yours around the world?
So museums that are exclusively dedicated to war childhood as like of entire generation, or as the museums that are trying to tackle not just individual stories of children, I am not aware of. So I do not dare any longer to say there are no similar museums, but as far as we know, there aren't. So it would be interesting also to hear from other participants if they ever encountered or heard of about a similar museum somewhere in the world.
Okay, thank you. And now the other 2 questions. So I will also try to combine them. One is asking about the feedback that you are getting from young visitors, so children who were born after the war, and how do you manage to evaluate and how you do this, the messages and the impact, change values. And of course, it's much connected to the question itself that you were already discussing. It's your research framework. So how you were going beyond suffering, beyond trauma, beyond pittiness, and you wanted to validate the experience and the dignity. And it's impressive how you develop your own tool to a higher level. And Svetlana is interested in knowing your research. So how do you conduct this as an institution? this meta level of researching. Where can she read more about kids' resilience and strength after active new agents of the post-war societies?
Okay. So first about young generation. So I mentioned that we have different types of activities, workshops. So we work with over 5,000 children from different parts of the country. And so we, after every activity in which they participate, we have we distribute questionnaires and to both children and teachers, or whoever is accompanying, like an adult accompanying a group of children. And this is how we collect the data. And we also ask children to write down their impressions in a guest book, and to also, if we work with very small children, then we don't go through questionnaires and writing, but we ask them to, if they can draw something, and this is how they express themselves. What we have thought was very, very important from day one, because of the nature of the topic we are dealing with, is to create a kids tour. So we have a child-friendly tour. Children are not entering exhibition alone, and we make sure that they don't visit, read, or come close to very upsetting stories. So we try to somehow avoid this, unless they are coming with their parents, and parents are really determined that their children should be exposed also to some more upsetting or more sad stories. And this is where, like, our responsibility somehow, because we always emphasize that some of the stories are not appropriate for children, and we recommend that they don't read this to children, but some parents still decide to. And we also put signs in throughout the exhibition, and also like small steps for children to know which stories are for them. So there's a smiley saying that ask an adult to read you the story, and there is also like 2 yellow steps for children to climb, and so that they can see the object like from closer, and ask somebody to read them a story. So this is the first part, the first question I believe I addressed. And the second one was more about the research, how we collect, how we work with it. So when we first started working, we were somehow turning to people from our community. So first we recorded oral history testimonies but among ourselves, and then with our friends, friend of a friend, participants in the book who were getting in touch. So we have methodology, and that I said is really, really paying attention that we shouldn't traumatize or re-traumatize anyone who comes to share their story. So what we do, we have this very broad framework, like set of questions that is helping us just to cover all different sections of life before the war, different aspects of life during the war, and life after the war. Now I'm talking about the methodology that works for people in post-conflict settings. And so we have this framework, but still people decide for themselves how deep and how detailed and how long they want to talk about their experiences. So we meet with everybody before, so just so that the interviewee and informant, so researcher and people and person who is about to tell the story meet before, and establish some kind of trust, and like get to know each other, so that they feel more comfortable and safer when they then meet there is a studio at the museum where we record these testimonies. So it is just one researcher, one person documenting, and another telling a story. And so usually there is, as you can imagine, a lot of emotions also involved. So people cry and laugh together, and we hug afterwards, and we cry together. And so there's really this very complex psychological process that we often, of course, have a psychologist on site who's, in case of very, very traumatic stories, we have a psychologist who prepares participants before they enter the studio and who debriefs them afterwards. So recently we conducted 100 testimonies with child survivors of genocide in Srebrenica, and this was really completely new level of challenges and many different segments, and this is where we had to make sure that we have a trained therapist for trauma, for like also for ourselves and for people coming. And so once we record this testimonies, once people donate their memorabilia and stories to the museum, then we maintain this contact. We stay in touch. We call, we organize gatherings, focus group, different types of like connections. So we want people to stay part of the community. Everybody who donates something to the museum receives this lifetime pass for all our events. But this is like very symbolic thing. It's really just to keep you part of the community. I don't know if I answered the question.
You answered it perfectly. So now you are getting congratulations. But I will skip to the next. I will go to the next question, which is a very important one. So, how the ethnic division in Bosnia and Herzegovina and conflict war narratives influence the selection of the material you use in your exhibitions?
Okay, so how do we produce an exhibition, or how do we document?
You were already discussing before that actually you don't want to go in one narrative or the other narrative. And we know for sure that the narratives about the conflict in Bosnia and Herzegovina are many, and they are multi-layered, and actually they're getting more and more complicated even decades after the war itself.
Yeah.
Basically what Miriam is asking here, and I think it's really very important, how you do the selection. Do you do, let's say, equally from one side to the other side, and how the selection itself is done?
Okay, so first of all, we believe it's very important not to fall into this trap of, because everything in our society works in this way. We have this, what we call like national key. So we have our presidency has 3 members, you know, just to satisfy this very technical thing. So there has to be a representative from every ethnic group. So we try to produce our exhibitions based on so many additional criteria. So not only that we want to include people of coming from different parts of the country or from different ethnic groups, but we also want to say, okay, it has to be gender balance, like so many, all different aspects of this experience have to be presented. We have to have, as I said, this balance between more and less traumatic and stories talking about sufferings. So if you have all this like very complex set of criteria, then of course also you, even as a result, you would have stories coming from different parts and from different ethnic group. But what I think I probably was supposed to mention now with this question, I understood. So the way everything is conceptualized in the War Childhood Museum is like, so we don't dwell onto this like what happened, who did what to whom and when and how. Like we are just, not just, but like we are dealing and focusing on everyday life of children. This does not mean that we would not, like, if you would ask me, of course, I would say that the decisions of courts, international tribunals, and other bodies that are working with establishing like what happened and how, like on a factual basis. So this, of course, is something that is like there, but not through our exhibitions. You wouldn't learn like this about these aspects. So you would learn about everyday life of children in war.
Okay, thank you. We still have two questions to answer, and I would say that then we are over because we are more than 1 hour already. So what do you see as the future of the museum and its initiatives that you are doing? I would say world around, but in your own city, how you are also cooperating with other museums in Sarajevo and in Bosnia. So I merged the two questions in one. One is how do you go worldwide, because I know that you do. And the other one is how do you work with the other institutions within the same city?
Okay, so what we, in general, I would say that the museums and cultural institutions in the country, not just in Sarajevo, do not receive recognition and support and are somehow marginalized even as a profession. So we tried somehow to help also and promote other institutions. For example, we were hosting a European Museum of the Year awards conference and ceremony, and we invited, so it was for the first time ever that at this conference museums from local community had a session to present their work and their platforms, and this is what we believed was important. And since institutions and museums from here do not have, as I said, sufficient support and funding even for basic operation, they certainly don't have funds for like traveling and participating in conferences as much as they should. And so we believe that this was very like interesting and relevant for them to have this opportunity too. For example, now there's a local initiative, so association of parents who lost their children in Sarajevo during the siege. They are creating and producing a permanent exhibition dedicated to killed children in Sarajevo, and we help them with methodology. We help them with like everywhere we can. We also had important collaboration with the Memorial Center of Srebrenica, and we were really happy to share our experiences, expertise, and methodology. So that we just think that it's important. Like, so the better the entire industry is here, the better we will be. So this is the motto, if you understand. And worldwide, we are really hoping that we will just continue growing and developing. So recently we registered our first office branch abroad in Kiev in Ukraine, and we hope to do something similar within the EU, and New York is also is on the list. So we are, let's say, parallelly working on several ideas, and I hope next time we speak, this will all be successfully implemented.
Okay, we are at the end. So I'm going to read just some of the important notes that we also got. So thank you. And I'm really very impressed how the museum came to being and how it's influenced and has been growing. And one wrote that she doesn't have a question, but a full admiration for the important work of the museum and for addressing the important and vital question for world childhood. So, Amina, thank you very much. I know for sure that if any one of our listeners would like to get in contact with you, you are an amazing person and you are willing to cooperate with everyone. Thank you for the important job that you are doing, you and your team, and we will follow you, and thank you again. And for all the ones who were listening, don't forget to do the survey. See you next week with the last webinar from the autumn webinar series. So it's Pamela Bellinger, The World That Refugees Made. Thank you again and see you next week.
Thank you so much.